They said the HOA was supposed to protect property values. But what happens when the one person claiming to protect the neighborhood is the one destroying it every single morning? Imagine waking up to the sound of crunching plastic, the thud of metal against asphalt, and realizing it isn't an accident. It's war. My name is Marcus Holloway. I never thought my life would end up in a battle over a trash can. But when you live in Pinewood Gardens, a cookie-cutter HOA neighborhood in suburban Ohio, even the smallest things can spiral into madness. And this one, it changed everything. The first time it happened, I thought it was a mistake. I was pouring my morning coffee when I heard it, the sharp crack of shattering plastic echoing like a gunshot in the dawn silence. I rushed outside, mug still in hand, only to see my brand-new trash can toppled, its guts spilled all across my driveway. Banana peels, soggy cereal boxes, wet coffee grounds, spread like confetti from some twisted celebration. And there she was. Brenda Whitmore, 52, retired banker, widow, and self-appointed compliance officer of our HOA, a title that doesn't even exist. She sat there in her pearl-white Escalade, window down, lips curled into a fake smile. "Oh my, Marcus," she said sweetly, "these streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Then she drove off. That old thing had cost me $23 at Home Depot the week before. But more than the money, it was the look on my kids' faces through the window, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14, watching their dad crawl around the driveway in his pajamas, picking up garbage while Brenda smirked from behind tinted glass. That was the part that stung. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. One time could be an accident. Even twice, maybe. But by the end of that week, the sound of her oversized engine at 6:15 a.m. became like a ticking clock counting down to destruction. Every morning, without fail, she'd barrel past my corner lot, clipping the can, leaving me on my knees gathering trash while she strutted away on her morning walk like she'd done the neighborhood a favor. By the fourth time, I knew it wasn't an accident. And when my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Olivia, whispered through her screen door, "She takes the long way on purpose, plenty of room other side," the truth sank in. This wasn't coincidence. This was targeted. I tried to reason with her, caught her one afternoon during one of her patrols, clipboard in hand, visor tilted just so. "Hey, Brenda, about the trash can," I started. She cut me off with a syrupy smile. "Marcus, you're new here. These streets weren't designed for oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments, like there was some magical hour when garbage trucks came invisibly. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about control. The smirk started the following week. Every time her Escalade crunched into my bin, she'd make eye contact. Not a word, just that smug little smile that said, "You can't stop me." It was psychological warfare played out in broad daylight. By the end of the month, I was $92 deep in replacement cans. My kids were begging me to just move it somewhere else. And my custody evaluator, who was already scrutinizing every detail of my life after the divorce, was taking notes about neighborhood stability concerns. My family's peace was unraveling over a plastic container. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, trash scattered in my memory like battle debris, and made a decision. I wasn't going to roll over. Not for Brenda. Not for anyone. I dug into research the way I'd hunt down an electrical fault on a job site. City ordinances, HOA bylaws, property rights cases from across the country. And what I found was simple, undeniable. Trash cans placed on public right-of-way are still personal property. And the HOA? Their jurisdiction ends at the property line. They couldn't touch me, not legally. But Brenda didn't stop. She escalated. A week later, I came home to a certified letter, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. "Improper receptacle placement creating traffic hazard," it read. $50 daily fines until corrected. I could almost see her sitting at her desk, typing it out with that smug smile, knowing she'd found a new weapon. But what she didn't know was that while she was building her case against me, I was building mine against her. I had the law, I had the camera, and soon enough I'd have the proof that would turn the tables. Because here's the thing about bullies. They never expect their victims to fight back with concrete evidence. They thought they had me cornered. A violation letter, fines piling up, and a smug neighbor with friends in high places. But what Brenda didn't count on was this: I don't give up when my family's peace is at stake. I fight. The night I opened that certified letter, I didn't sleep. The thick paper felt heavier than it was, like it carried a threat between the lines. My kids were upstairs, trying to finish homework while I sat at the table under the dim kitchen light, rereading the notice over and over. $50 a day, every day, until I moved my trash can out of traffic. My driveway was a dead end. The only traffic out there was Brenda's Escalade, slamming into my property like it was a demolition derby. I knew I couldn't just shrug this one off. Brenda had turned a petty grudge into an official weapon, so I did what I do best: I documented. The next morning, I installed a Ring camera angled perfectly toward the street. Cost me $47, but the peace of mind was worth every penny. By 6:15, the proof was already rolling in. Her engine roared, her tires crunched, and my trash can toppled. But this time, every second was captured in crisp high definition. When I showed the footage to my neighbor, Mrs. Olivia, she clasped her hands together. "Marcus, this is not right," she whispered. Her voice shook, but she agreed to sign a written statement. I could see the fear in her eyes. People like Brenda made the elderly terrified of speaking up. But she still signed, and that mattered. I didn't stop there. I ordered a professional survey of my property line. Precise measurements, stamped and signed, showing my trash can was exactly where city ordinance required it to be, within 3 feet of the curb. I even found a case online where a homeowner in California beat their HOA with the exact same argument. That gave me hope. Meanwhile, Brenda was waging her own campaign. She flooded the neighborhood app with posts about reckless homeowners and dangerous trash cans endangering children. The comments section lit up like a battlefield. 3 loyal supporters cheered her on. Everyone else, they were tired of her power trips. Then came the moment that told me just how desperate she was getting. A buddy of mine at City Hall, Dave, works in the permit office, gave me a call. "Marcus," he said, chuckling, "the city got 4 complaints about your corner last night, all filed within 15 minutes, all from different names, but guess what? Exact same wording. Someone's pulling overtime trying to bury you." We both knew who. By the time the monthly HOA meeting rolled around, I was ready. My folder was thick enough to choke a horse. Ordinances, survey results, camera footage, signed witness statements, layered like armor. The boardroom smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. About a dozen neighbors showed up, curious to see what the fuss was about. Brenda sat at the head table in a navy blazer, clipboard clutched tight like a weapon. Her lips pursed, her eyes darting, her hands trembling ever so slightly when she reached for her water glass. She tried to look powerful, but she knew something was coming. When the president, Gerald Thornfield, asked if there was any old business, I stood. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me as I placed my documents on the table. "Yes, I'd like to address the violation notice regarding my trash can placement." The room went still, every eye turned. I read the city ordinance aloud, word for word. I laid down the survey results proving compliance. I showed the footage of Brenda's Escalade striking my property again and again. And then, casually, I mentioned that I'd already consulted with a property rights attorney who found the board's selective enforcement very interesting. You could have heard a pin drop. Brenda's face drained of color. President Thornfield cleared his throat 3 times before mumbling, "Well, this requires further review. We'll table the matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing, they knew it. And everyone in that room knew it too. But Brenda wasn't finished. As we filed out into the parking lot under the buzz of security lights, she cornered me. Her voice dropped to a venomous hiss, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "You think you're clever. People like you don't belong in places like this, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." Mrs. Rodriguez gasped. Jim, the maintenance guy, suddenly became very interested in his car keys. The racial undertones hung heavy in the humid October air. My phone, sitting quietly in my shirt pocket, recorded every poisonous syllable. That night my daughter Emma asked, "Dad, why does the mean lady hate us so much?" My son Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them into bed, forcing a smile, promising everything would be okay. But inside, I was calculating the cost of this war. 3 replacement trash cans, 14 hours of documentation, attorney fees climbing. But something had changed. I could feel it in the air. Other neighbors had seen her true colors now. Whispers spread about board overreach, about selective enforcement, about corruption. For the first time, I wasn't fighting this battle alone. And Brenda, she had no idea what was coming next. They say bullies don't stop when you stand up to them. Sometimes that's just when they double down. And Brenda, she was just getting started. The week after the board meeting, she changed tactics. If she couldn't win with fake traffic hazard complaints, she'd bury me under every obscure bylaw she could dig up. It started with a letter about my lawn. Violation: grass height exceeds 2.5-inch standard. Her measurement: 2.75 inches, a quarter inch, a blade of grass taller than her ego. The next letter hit my mailbox 2 days later. Mailbox color does not conform to approved palette. Heritage blue, apparently, had faded into unauthorized, weathered navy. As if Benjamin Moore was going to shut down Pinewood Gardens over a shade of paint. And then, 3 tiny tears in my window screens, so small you'd need a magnifying glass to see them. Another $50 fine. Another deadline. Another reminder that Brenda wasn't letting go. But here's the kicker. I wasn't the only one with long grass, faded mailboxes, or torn screens. Gerald Thornfield, the HOA president himself, his lawn was practically a hayfield. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox had faded into the exact same shade as mine. Half of Maple Street had screen damage from the summer hailstorm, yet only my house was racking up violations. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about me. And Brenda was weaponizing the HOA to grind me down until I broke. So I fought back. I spent a Saturday walking the neighborhood, tape measure and camera in hand, documented 14 other properties with the exact same violations. Compiled it all in a neat little folder. If they wanted to find me, they'd have to find everyone else too. But the war wasn't just about paperwork anymore. It was about morale, and that's where fate handed me a spark. I was standing in the contractor aisle at Home Depot, flipping through paint samples, when I bumped into an old buddy, Dale Kowalski. 23 years pouring concrete. Grizzled, sunburned, with the kind of permanent squint you only get from decades of outdoor work. We got to talking. I told him about Brenda, the trash can saga, the Escalade collisions. He chuckled, stirring sugar into his coffee with a paint stir stick. "You know, Marcus," he said, "there's no city code about what material you make your trash container out of. Plastic, metal, concrete. As long as it holds garbage and meets size limits, you're good." That one line hit me like a lightning bolt. Concrete. A seed planted itself in my mind right there in that hardware store. A solution so simple, so perfectly legal, and so devastatingly effective, it almost felt like destiny. I could see it already. 60 pounds of reinforced concrete hidden inside a standard plastic shell. To the world, it would look like every other trash can on the block. But when Brenda's Escalade met that immovable object, the laws of physics would do what the HOA never could. That weekend, I put the plan into motion. My kids thought it was hilarious, helping me mix cement in the garage while classic rock blasted from an old paint-splattered radio. Emma stirred with a wooden stick, laughing when it splashed her sneakers. Tyler lined up the rebar like he was building a fortress. The smell of wet concrete filled the air, sharp and earthy, bringing back memories of helping my dad pour a basement floor when I was their age. It wasn't just about building a trash can anymore. It was about building something permanent, a stand, a line in the sand. I designed it carefully, hollow at the bottom for drainage, rebar inside for strength, the exterior disguised with a standard plastic shell. To anyone passing by, it looked like an ordinary can. But inside, it was an indestructible monument to one simple message. I wouldn't be bullied anymore. Monday morning came. I rolled my creation to its usual spot at the curb, the same 3 feet from the road. The same placement Brenda had targeted 57 times before. I stood by the window, coffee mug warm in my hands, waiting. At exactly 6:15 a.m., like clockwork, the roar of her Escalade echoed down the street. She came in slower this time, cautious, suspicious. Maybe she'd noticed something different, but suspicion didn't stop her. She lined up, revved the engine, and hit. The sound wasn't plastic crunching. It was metal screaming. A solid thunk reverberated through the morning air, followed by the screech of steel bending against something that refused to move. Her Escalade jolted, the running board folding like tin foil. My trash can didn't so much as wobble. I couldn't help but smile. For 30 seconds, Brenda just sat there, staring through the windshield, trying to compute what had just happened. Then, unbelievably, she tried again. From another angle. Harder. The result? More damage to her $60,000 SUV. 0 to mine. Physics, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful, unforgiving physics. That was the moment I knew. The war had shifted. She thought she was playing a demolition game. What she didn't realize was that I'd just rewritten the rules. And from that day forward, every time her bumper kissed my concrete fortress, she wasn't destroying me. She was destroying herself. They say madness is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. If that's true, Brenda was slipping into madness right before our eyes. By the end of the first week, her Escalade already bore the scars. Scratches down the side, a bent running board, spiderweb cracks across the bumper. Each morning, she'd line up for another attempt like a gambler convinced the next pull of the slot machine would finally pay out. Each time, my trash can stood solid while her SUV absorbed the punishment. The neighbors started noticing. At first, it was whispered jokes. Did Brenda really just hit that can again? By Friday, it was open laughter. Teenagers timing her collisions on their phones. Mrs. Rodriguez muttering prayers and shaking her head. The indestructible trash can was becoming a local legend. But Brenda wasn't laughing. No, she was unraveling. I caught the first glimpse late one night. Mrs. Olivia called me in a hushed voice, almost whispering through the phone. "Marcus, that woman, she was in your driveway with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I think she tried to weigh your trash can." The mental image made me chuckle. Brenda, crouched in the dark, navy blazer and sensible shoes, trying to balance 60 pounds of reinforced concrete on a bathroom scale. But the humor faded quickly, because this wasn't just HOA harassment anymore. This was trespassing. This was obsession. And it escalated. The following week, our maintenance guy Jim pulled me aside. "Marcus, you're not gonna believe this. Brenda cornered me at the hardware store, asked me if I knew anyone buying unusual materials, concrete, rebar, cement mix, like she's Sherlock Holmes hunting for clues." Not long after, a knock at my door revealed a tired-looking city inspector named Pete. Clipboard in hand, he sighed as he explained. "Got a complaint about unauthorized concrete structures on residential property, something about safety violations." I walked him to the curb, gestured toward the can. He tapped it once, scribbled on his form, and shook his head. "Sir, it's a garbage container, not a foundation. No violations, no permits needed. Honestly, I've seen people build whole sheds without this much scrutiny." He left, shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. But Brenda didn't stop. She doubled down. The next week brought an HOA letter demanding immediate access to inspect my property for modifications. A fishing expedition, plain and simple. They wanted inside my garage, inside my yard, anywhere they thought they could catch me breaking a rule. But I'd done my homework. I knew the law. HOA authority ends at the property line. Without a court order, they couldn't set foot past my sidewalk. So I responded politely but firmly. "No private property access without judicial approval. If you'd like to view my trash receptacle, the public sidewalk offers a perfect vantage point." The smell of her frustration was sweeter than fresh concrete. Meanwhile, every collision was adding insult to injury. Her once pristine Escalade was becoming a rolling billboard for her obsession. The bumper rattled like loose teeth. The headlights dangled. The alignment was shot, chewing through her tires. By now, the damage estimate had to be in the thousands, and yet morning after morning, she kept coming back. The neighborhood kids turned it into entertainment. Emma, my daughter, came home embarrassed. "Dad, people at school are calling us the Concrete Can family." Tyler, on the other hand, saw opportunity. "What if we sold tickets? $5 a seat, front row demolition derby, Dad. We could pay for my college. But beneath the humor, something darker was brewing. Brenda's obsession wasn't just about a trash can anymore. She was unraveling in real time, and desperate people do desperate things. That's when Patricia Lopez, one of the only reasonable board members, quietly pulled me aside after a neighborhood event. Her voice was low, her eyes darting like she was afraid Brenda might overhear. "Marcus, you need to know something. Brenda's been having private meetings with Gerald. She's pushing for enhanced enforcement authority. Property inspections, contractor restrictions, even background checks on homeowners." And Patricia hesitated, then added, "She keeps pushing contracts. Maintenance work, always with the same company, Whitmore Construction." The name hit me like a jolt. Whitmore, Brenda's last name. That night, long after the kids went to bed, I opened my laptop and started digging. Public records, business registrations, municipal databases. Hours passed, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge and the click of my keyboard. And then I found it. Whitmore Construction, LLC, formed 6 months ago. Brenda listed as partial owner, her husband, Richard, as president, and right there in black and white, 7 HOA contracts awarded to the company in just 4 months. Sidewalk repairs, playground maintenance, landscaping, over $23,000 in payouts. Every contract underbid by just enough to edge out competitors. Every contract signed off by Brenda herself. It wasn't about my trash can. It was about money, control, a scheme. And my reinforced fortress, standing stubbornly at the curb, had become a threat, not just to her SUV, but to her entire operation. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen, the realization sinking in. This wasn't an HOA feud anymore. It was corruption, it was fraud. And Brenda had no idea that the very thing she'd tried to destroy, a trash can, was about to be the concrete evidence that would destroy her instead. They say when you fight a bully long enough, you stop fighting just for yourself. You start fighting for everyone they've hurt. That's exactly where I was the night my garage turned into a war room. It was a Tuesday evening. The kids were upstairs with homework, the radio was off, and my garage was lit by the harsh glow of a single hanging bulb. I'd cleared off the workbench, pushed the ladders aside, and laid out evidence across folding tables like I was building a case for trial. Documents, photos, financial records, everything I had on Brenda Whitmore. By 7 o'clock, my allies arrived. First through the door was Mrs. Olivia, clutching her thermos of jasmine tea, nerves in her eyes but determination in her steps. Then Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, tool belt still jingling from a long day's work. Patricia Lopez came next, a stack of HOA files tucked under her arm, lips pressed into a thin, resolute line. And finally Dale Kowalski, concrete contractor, carrying a box of donuts like we were planning a party instead of a neighborhood coup. We sat in a circle and I taped the timeline chart to the wall, contracts, violations, collision footage, all connected by red string. It looked like something out of a detective show. But this wasn't TV. This was our lives. "Here, what we're dealing with," I began, pointing to the board. "Brenda's not just harassing families, she's running a scam. $23,000 in HOA contracts funneled straight into her family's company, 7 conflicts of interest. And every time we got close to exposing her, she used harassment to distract us. The trash can wasn't the target, it was the cover." Patricia whistled under her breath. I knew those budgets were off. I just didn't realize how systematic it was. Every time I questioned her, she had a rehearsed explanation. Dale leaned over the photos of Brenda's SUV damage, chuckling. "That bumper's a goner, $2,000 easy. The alignment. She'll chew through tires like bubblegum. Marcus, your concrete fortress is teaching her a very expensive lesson." But I wasn't laughing. This isn't about a car anymore. It's about a woman stealing from 127 homeowners and thinking she's untouchable. We spent the next hour building a strategy, not just one angle, 4. Legal pressure. Attorney Amanda Sterling had already reviewed the case. With enough documentation, we had grounds for harassment, fraud, and board misconduct. Social pressure. Mrs. Olivia and others would go door to door, collecting signatures, building neighborhood support. Political pressure. Patricia would work inside the board, planting seeds, pressing for a financial audit, whispering to the reasonable members who were already uneasy. And media pressure. I'd contact Channel 7's investigative reporter, Sarah Kim, who had a reputation for tearing apart HOA corruption stories. We were going to surround Brenda from all sides until she cracked. That week the plan went into motion. Wednesday morning I began knocking on doors. My pitch was simple. Do you want to know where your dues are going? I carried a folder of photos and records, and the reaction was overwhelming. By the end of the day, I had 89 signatures demanding property rights, 34 calling for a financial audit, and a dozen neighbors willing to testify at the next board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez nearly slammed the door in my face until I explained the contracts. Then she grabbed the pen and signed so hard it nearly tore the page. That woman fined me for leaving my garbage can out 15 minutes past pickup, she fumed. 15 minutes, like she had a stopwatch. The social tide was turning. At the same time, our Facebook group, Pinewood Gardens Transparency, went live. Within 4 days, it had 67 members. People shared their own stories of Brenda's harassment, roses deemed unsightly, sidewalk chalk called graffiti, mailboxes ticketed for imaginary shade violations. Someone even posted a time-lapse video of her daily collisions set to circus music. It went viral across the county. But the real hammer was still to come. On Friday night, we held our second garage meeting. This time, the evidence had doubled. Patricia had dug into old board files, uncovering a pattern. In the last year, Brenda had issued 67 violations. 49 of them targeted single parents, minorities, or elderly residents. Only 18 were against long-term married couples. It wasn't just harassment, it was discrimination. I remember leaning against the workbench, staring at the chart, anger burning through me. She thinks she can break people because they're vulnerable. Well, now she's about to find out what happens when the whole neighborhood stands together. The next morning, as if to remind us just how far she'd fallen, Brenda struck again. Collision attempt number 53. Her Escalade lost an entire headlight this time, dangling from wires like a broken tooth. The kids at the bus stop cheered. Tyler recorded it and showed me later, grinning ear to ear. Dad, I could sell tickets. We'd make a fortune. But beneath the laughter, I felt it momentum. The community was waking up. Brenda wasn't the enforcer anymore. She was the joke. And in just a few days, when the next board meeting came, she wouldn't be laughing at all. Because this time, I wasn't walking in with just a folder of evidence. I was walking in with an army. The thing about desperate people is, they don't fight smarter, they fight dirtier. And Brenda, she was spiraling into desperation faster than her Escalade was falling apart against my concrete fortress. It started small. One Saturday night, I was jolted awake by the hiss of spray paint. I ran to the window, and there it was, orange letters scrawled across my trash can in sloppy strokes. Move. By the time I grabbed my phone and ran outside, the figure was gone. But the cameras weren't. Every angle of her crouched form, the license plate of the pearl-white Escalade parked 3 houses down, captured in crystal clarity. Spray paint washes off concrete in 30 seconds, but the stain on her reputation, that was permanent. Monday morning brought a new twist. An inspector from the gas company showed up, saying they'd received an anonymous complaint that I was digging dangerously close to underground lines. He walked the property for 2 hours, scanning, measuring, muttering. Finally, he looked up, exasperated. There's no excavation here. Whoever reported this either needs glasses or a psych evaluation. I didn't need him to say the name. We both knew who called. But Brenda wasn't done, not even close. By midweek, Jim Torres pulled me aside at the hardware store, face grim. Marcus, you won't believe this. She hired Riverside Security, $200 a day to watch your house. Private surveillance over a trash can. The irony was almost comical. Brenda had people sitting in cars near my house with cameras while my upgraded security system filmed them filming me. Every drive-by, every midnight photo session, every erratic behavior documented, time-stamped, backed up on 3 different clouds. And then she crossed a line I couldn't laugh off. Friday evening, Tyler was fixing his bike in the driveway when he spotted it, a black device stuck under my work truck, blinking red, magnet-mounted. He called me over, his voice tight. "Dad, what's this thing?" I froze. A GPS tracker, professional grade. I photographed it from every angle, removed it carefully, and drove straight to the police station. Officer Martinez listened, jaw tightening as I laid it on the counter. "Mr. Holloway," he said, "this isn't HOA nonsense anymore. This is criminal. Unauthorized surveillance, stalking, harassment. We're building a case file, and it's getting serious." Serious didn't begin to cover it. Because while I was dealing with trackers and private security, Brenda was busy trying to scam her own insurance company. She filed a $3,200 claim for road hazard damage, pretending her Escalade had been mangled on a city street. But the ring footage told the truth. Deliberate collisions, again and again, targeting my concrete fortress. When State Farm's investigator called me, I was ready. I handed over 53 documented impacts, witness statements, and expert assessments of the damage patterns. The man flipped through the evidence, then leaned back, shaking his head. "Ma'am," he said on the phone later, "this isn't road hazard damage. This is intentional property destruction with your vehicle. Claim denied. Case referred to fraud unit." The walls were closing in, and Brenda could feel it. But instead of backing down, she lashed out harder. Emma came home from school one day, her eyes red. She overheard Brenda whispering to another parent about dangerous influences and bad role models for children. The racial undertones weren't subtle. The implication was clear. Brenda wasn't just trying to ruin me. She was trying to poison the custody battle for my kids. That was the moment I stopped treating this as a neighbor feud. I hired Bate Morrison, a retired detective specializing in harassment cases. She wasn't cheap, $200 a day, but she knew how to document patterns, escalate to prosecutors, and testify in court. With Bate on the case, every trespass, every spray-painted stunt, every whispered slander was cataloged by a professional. Still, Brenda kept pushing. Anonymous complaints flooded city offices. My lawn too tall, my electrical permits suspicious. My business reviews suddenly flooded with fake negatives online. Each attack more frantic than the last, like a drowning woman thrashing in deep water. And then came the breaking point. Saturday morning, 6:15 a.m., collision attempt number 57. This time, her SUV lost its bumper entirely. It clattered to the pavement in front of my house while she scrambled out in her business attire, mascara streaked, gathering fragments under the gaze of neighbors peeking through blinds. The queen of HOA enforcement, reduced to crawling on her knees, scooping up plastic like scraps of dignity. By Sunday night, my evidence folder was overflowing. Harassment, vandalism, insurance fraud, stalking, financial theft. I'd built a case so solid it could crush her harder than my trash can crush her Escalade. The board meeting was only days away. The media was circling, the police were investigating, and Brenda, she was unraveling in real time. But even then, she wasn't done, because desperate people don't stop until someone stops them. And soon enough, the whole neighborhood would watch her final act of self-destruction, live, in front of cameras. They say the bigger the ego, the harder the fall. And on the night of the Pinewood Gardens board meeting, Brenda Whitmore didn't just fall. She collapsed in front of the entire neighborhood live, with cameras rolling. By 6 o'clock, the parking lot looked like Black Friday. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street, neighbors walking in from 3 blocks away with lawn chairs under their arms. Channel 7's news van was already parked out front, satellite dish raised, reporter Sarah Kim standing by with her microphone. Even Channel 12 showed up, smelling blood in the water. Inside, the community center buzzed with nervous energy. The room was built for 40 people. 118 crammed inside. Another 30 stood in the hallway. The air conditioning couldn't keep up. The walls dripped with heat, and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead felt like wasps circling prey. I sat in the 3rd row, flanked by Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres. To my left, perched proudly beside the podium, was Exhibit A, my concrete trash can, wheeled in like a witness ready to testify. Its scuffed exterior, untouched by 57 collisions, gleamed under the harsh lights like a trophy. At exactly 6:15 p.m., the same time she usually rammed that can, Brenda arrived, dressed in funeral black instead of her usual navy blazer, flanked by her high-priced attorney, Harold Masterson. She scanned the crowd, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Gerald Thornfield, the HOA president, kept tugging at his tie, sweat soaking through his shirt like he'd walked into a sauna. The gavel cracked, Gerald's voice shook. We'll now hear public comments regarding recent community concerns. I rose to my feet, carrying presentation boards like a prosecutor approaching a jury. The room went silent except for the hum of the exit sign. This isn't about trash cans, I began, my voice carrying across the packed space. This isn't about bylaws. This is about accountability, about stopping corruption before it destroys our neighborhood. I walked them through everything. The 57 documented collisions, each one caught in HD, the spray paint vandalism, the GPS tracker found under my truck, the insurance fraud attempt, the harassment of my kids, each point landed like a hammer on stone. Then I shifted to the real crime. Using the borrowed projector, I displayed financial records that showed $23,000 funneled directly into Whitmore Construction. Every month, I said, turning toward the crowd, your dues were paying not for maintenance but for Brenda's private business. 7 contracts, 7 conflicts of interest, 7 violations of state law. Gasps rippled through the room. Mrs. Rodriguez shot to her feet, shouting rapid-fire Spanish. The teenagers in the back started clapping like they were at a concert. And then came the bombshell. At 6:45 p.m., the back doors opened. Officer Martinez walked in, folder in hand. His voice was calm, almost casual. Sorry to interrupt, but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges. The color drained from Brenda's face. Her attorney whispered furiously, but it was too late. The cameras turned, shutters clicking, red lights glowing. Channel 7 caught every frame. Still, Brenda tried to fight. She shot up from her chair like a jack-in-the-box, her voice hitting a pitch that could shatter glass. This is harassment. These people don't understand property values. They come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply. Her finger jabbed at Mrs. Olivia. At Jim Torres, at me. Racial undertones hung in the air like smoke. The crowd gasped, murmured, shifted in their seats. And the cameras, they caught every poisonous word. Then Brenda snapped. She lunged for my evidence boards, tearing at them, trying to rip them apart. Jim and 2 neighbors stepped forward, gently restraining her as her mascara streaked down her cheeks like black rivers. I built this community, she shrieked. I sacrificed everything for standards, and this is how you repay me. The room exploded. Applause, shouts, laughter. It was chaos, messy, raw, uncontainable. And in the middle of it, Patricia Lopez stood. Her voice was steady, strong. I move for the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore from the board, pending criminal investigation and financial audit. The vote was swift, 4-0, unanimous. Brenda abstained because she was handcuffed to a chair by Officer Martinez. In that moment, justice was served, not quietly, not in back rooms, but publicly, loudly, with the entire community watching. As I stood there, the cameras rolling, the crowd cheering, Brenda's head hung low. Her once pristine reputation crumbled to dust. The bully had finally been beaten. But the war wasn't truly over yet, because when a tower collapses, the dust takes time to settle. And the aftermath of Brenda's downfall would change Pinewood Gardens forever. They say justice is slow, but when it comes, it crashes down like concrete, heavy, permanent, undeniable. And after that night at the community center, Brenda Whitmore's world collapsed faster than her Escalade suspension after the 57th collision. Within 48 hours, she was gone from the board. Her resignation letter, 2 bitter lines about a hostile work environment, wasn't fooling anyone. By Thursday, the district attorney filed insurance fraud charges carrying 6 months of jail time and a $5,000 fine. State investigators suspended Whitmore Construction's license. Our emergency HOA audit uncovered $47,000 in missing funds, every penny traced to Brenda's contracts. And then came the part that made the entire neighborhood cheer: refund checks. $3,170 mailed to every homeowner before Christmas, the sweetest holiday gift Pinewood Gardens had ever seen. Richard Whitmore, her husband, called me one last time. His voice was hollow, defeated. "The settlement check in the mail," he muttered. 12,500 as agreed. Brenda's moving to Florida to live with her sister. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered the tracker under my truck, the spray paint on my can, the months of harassment my kids endured. No amount of pity could erase that. But while Brenda's empire crumbled, something new was being built in our community. Patricia Lopez was elected board president in a landslide. Her platform? Transparency, accountability, fairness. The new board passed reforms requiring financial disclosures, open bidding for contracts, and monthly reports to homeowners. For the first time in years, people actually trusted the HOA. Our first project under the new leadership was symbolic, renovating the playground, funded entirely by the recovered embezzlement money. Watching Emma and Tyler help design the new swings and slides alongside neighbors who once whispered about our troublemaking family felt like vindication wrapped in laughter. But it didn't stop there. The case of Holloway versus Pinewood Gardens was cited in 12 other property rights battles across Ohio. State lawmakers passed the HOA Accountability Act, mandating financial audits and disclosure requirements. Channel 7's investigative series on our saga won a regional Emmy. And Sarah Kim, the reporter, still calls me sometimes when she's chasing HOA corruption stories. Even the trash can itself became a legend. The board moved it into the community center lobby, complete with a bronze plaque that read, "Property Rights Protected 2023. New homeowners hear the story during orientation. Contractors stop by just to see the indestructible can that brought down a board. It's more than a trash container now. It's a monument." But the real victory, healing. That September, we hosted the first annual Concrete Can Days Festival. Bounce houses for kids, barbecue competitions for families, live music echoing across the park. 800 people attended from surrounding neighborhoods. What started as a war turned into a celebration of resilience. Every year since, it's grown bigger. The settlement money even seeded something I never expected, a scholarship. The Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship helps kids who show creativity in problem-solving against unfair odds. Emma wrote her college essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence. She got into 3 journalism programs. Tyler started a YouTube channel called Suburban Justice, posting HOA horror stories with the enthusiasm of a teenage investigative reporter. And me, my custody evaluation changed everything. The judge noted that my children benefited from seeing a parent fight for justice through legal channels instead of surrendering. My electrical contracting business boomed. Neighbors who once watched me pick up trash in pajamas now referred me for complex jobs, telling clients, "That man documents everything. He doesn't miss a detail." Looking back, I sometimes think about that first morning, the sharp crack of plastic, the humiliation of gathering garbage while Brenda smirked from her SUV. At the time, it felt like defeat, but now I know it was the spark. The moment a bully underestimated her neighbor, and the moment I realized preparation, patience, and persistence could topple anyone. Sometimes David really does beat Goliath. Not with stones, not with violence, but with evidence, with allies. And in my case, with 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete. So if you're listening to this and dealing with your own HOA nightmare, remember, bullies don't expect you to fight back. And when you do, when you stand firm, when you hold your ground, they destroy themselves. Justice tastes sweetest when served cold and reinforced with concrete. Drop a comment and share your HOA nightmare story. Hit that subscribe button if you want more tailies where the little guy wins. Because this isn't just about trash cans. It's about standing up when everyone else tells you to sit down. And that, my friends, is a story worth telling. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.